Which San Francisco 49ers wide receiver should you be drafting this coming season? So it'd be pretty easy to bore you with all the stats, but I thought I'd kind of just hop into my opinion because ultimately this is really going to come down to people's opinions, not so much the data. Looking at the situations for all three players, I think it's kind of straightforward, right? So starting with Brandon Aiyuk, he had a pretty dang good breakout season in 2023. Obviously, going into 2024, he wasn't playing that hot and then got injured. Was he already injured before? We don't know. We'll probably never know, but let's just assume that he wasn't injured, and let's just assume that his efficiency started to fall off. Because if we look at his 2022 season, he wasn't quite as efficient with his yards after catch and yards per route run as he was in 2023. So he kind of had a crazy jump up in efficiency and then kind of came back to earth in 2024. If we shift over to Jauan Jennings, the biggest issue for him through the first 3 seasons with the 49ers was that he wasn't getting the targets. Obviously, you had Brandon Aiyuk, you had Deebo Samuel, you had George Kittle, and you had CMC pretty much gobbling up, 90% of the targets. So he wasn't really getting his opportunity. When you watch Jauan Jennings on tape, he was a pretty explosive wide receiver. In 2024, though, he finally got the targets because, again, Aiyuk went down. Deebo Samuel wasn't playing the same and was hurt throughout the season, as was George Kittle, and CMC was out for pretty much the entire season as well. So essentially speaking, it was Jauan Jennings' first shot at really being the number one target earner on his team. Ricky Pearsall was obviously out as well from his gunshot wound, so he pretty much was the guy on this team. Hopping from him over to Ricky Pearsall. Ricky Pearsall obviously didn't play the first handful of weeks because of his gunshot wound. After he came back, it was kind of a slow start, but it kind of makes sense because if you're coming back from a gunshot wound, you're probably not going to be playing at 100% of your potential right off the bat. And also, he's got to adjust to the NFL, right? As the season went along, the biggest thing that stood out to me was that Ricky Pearsall started to look a little bit more explosive and a little bit more efficient, where Jauan Jennings looked like he was kind of dialing back a little bit. I do know that Jauan Jennings had an injury. I can't remember what week it was. It might have been like 11 or 12. So that may have labored him for the rest of the season where he wasn't able to play up to that same potential. Or it could have been that the defenses and defensive coordinators were adjusting coverages and paying more attention to him because people were seeing week after week that he was the number one target earner. Obviously, again, the reason why stats don't matter that much is because a lot of this is just your opinion. Who do you think is going to do better next season? So who should you draft next season? So to try and answer this question, right? In 2023, we saw Brandon Aiyuk average almost 15 PPR points per game. So if we kind of assume that dials back to more of what it was like in 2022 and he averages 12 or 13 PPR points per game, that's not really somebody that I want to go all in with, if I'm being 100% honest. And obviously, he's going later, so maybe you're not going all in, but do I really want to draft him, I guess is the better way of putting it. When we transition to looking, like I said, at Jauan Jennings, like I said, his efficiency metrics were pretty much the same for every single season. It's just the amount of target volume that he's getting. It's really going to be dependent on how he finishes. I feel like with the departure of Deebo Samuel and assuming that Brandon Aiyuk plays at his 2022 level, which was still good but not hyper efficient, I do believe that you're getting Jauan Jennings pretty much doing what he did last season, maybe a half a step up. So maybe you're getting more of a 15 to 16 points per game out of him. And that's not necessarily his absolute crazy peak year. I think it would be a good year for him. So already right there, you're going to be a point or two higher than Brandon Aiyuk in PPR points per game, just based off of what he did last season with a little baby step up and also just playing every single week and getting the same target volume because the first 2 or 3 weeks he wasn't getting that same target volume he got during his breakout week performance. Then if we look at Ricky Pearsall, the biggest thing for him is obviously we don't necessarily know what his ceiling is. If we haven't seen Jauan Jennings at his peak and we haven't seen Ricky Pearsall at his peak, but we have seen Brandon Aiyuk, as far as I'm concerned, at his peak, max efficiency, then what are we going to do? So for me personally, what I intend to do going into next year, I'm intending to draft Jauan Jennings as much as I possibly can, depending on my draft and where I'm drafting. If I can get him without overreaching, he is somebody that I want. I think his base floor is about 15 points per game on a PPR basis. I think that he has the potential to maybe get up to 17 and a half if he really is truly the main target earner for the 49ers. Now, the bigger question I feel like people are asking not only is who should you draft? So I'm telling you, Jauan Jennings is my answer. But I think the better question to be asking is between Brandon Aiyuk and Ricky Pearsall. Who do you want? Again, I've seen Aiyuk at his peak efficiency. I don't think I've seen that out of Ricky Pearsall. I don't believe last season that Aiyuk was really injured in those first few weeks. I think his efficiency had gone back to where it was at in 2022 or 2021. So if I was going to have to choose between those two, or if in my drafts I can't get Jauan Jennings because maybe he goes a little bit earlier than I was expecting, or he goes earlier than ADP, then that puts me in a spot where I know the next person I want to pick is Ricky Pearsall. Again, I'd rather shoot my shot on a guy who hasn't hit his ceiling versus someone who has, and I don't anticipate that he's going to be able to get to that same level again going in the next season, injury withstanding. So for me, again, Jauan Jennings is the guy I want. If I can't get him, if he's drafted too early, whatever it is, I will take Ricky Pearsall just for taking my shot on one of these guys. I can't imagine a draft where I'm leaving without either Jauan Jennings or Ricky Pearsall. I want to make sure that I'm taking my shot to get the number one target earner or potential number one target earner on the 49ers offense that's being led by Kyle Shanahan as the head coach. So if I got to pick one of them, it's going to go Jauan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall. I'm not going to take Aiyuk no matter what. If I don't get one of those two guys, then poo on me, because I'm missing out on a good opportunity, but that would be the order and who I would take. All right, so this was kind of short, sweet, and to the point. Hopefully this helps you get just a little bit closer to winning your fantasy football championship in 2025. There should be videos around here somewhere of other matchups that I think are important to discuss in fantasy football that maybe will help you kind of answer if you're in between two players in your drafts. Hopefully I'll see you guys again. No, hopefully you guys will see me again real soon. Until then, y'all have a blessed day.